I thought the worst thing my ex-wife ever did to me was cheating. I was wrong. The worst thing happened at her wedding, to the man she told me not to worry about. Welcome to Amelia's Stories. Keep listening. These real stories about love, trust, and betrayal will give you true life experiences. If you're new, drop your location in the comments and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. The invitation arrived on a Thursday afternoon, tucked between utility bills and grocery coupons, like it didn't belong there. Thick cream paper. Elegant lettering. Marissa Caldwell and Grant Holloway. For a second I honestly thought it was a mistake. Some cruel joke sent to the wrong address. Then I saw the date. The location. The name I used to share with her. Marissa. My ex-wife. Grant. The friend. The one I was told I was imagining things about. The one who smiled too easily and shook my hand a little too firmly. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at the envelope, feeling that familiar mix of humiliation and disbelief crawl up my spine. Every memory I thought I'd buried came rushing back. Late nights, excuses, the way she stopped looking at me the same. I told myself I didn't care anymore. I told myself I'd moved on. But the truth was simpler and harder to admit. I needed to see it with my own eyes. Not for revenge. Not to cause a scene. I needed closure. Something the divorce never gave me. On the day of the wedding, I stood outside the venue, adjusting a suit I hadn't worn since court, my heart pounding hard enough to hurt. I took a breath, pushed the door open and walked inside. Looking back, our marriage felt solid in the way old houses feel solid. Quiet, familiar, built on years of shared routines. Marissa and I met in our mid-20s, both convinced we'd figured life out early. We bonded over late-night diner runs, bad movies, and the kind of dreams people make when they believe time is on their side. A home. Stability. Growing old without drama. For a long time it worked. We weren't flashy, but we were steady. Or at least that's what I believed. The changes came softly, almost politely. Marissa started pulling away in ways that were easy to excuse. She stayed late at work more often. Her phone was suddenly always face down. Conversations that used to flow turned brief and distracted. When I asked how her day went, she'd answer without really answering, her mind somewhere else. That was when she mentioned Grant. Just a coworker, she said casually, like his name didn't matter. Someone she worked closely with. Someone who helped her when things got stressful. I told myself that was normal. Adults have coworkers. Adults have friendships. I didn't want to be the insecure husband who read into nothing. Still, a quiet unease settled in. Not fear, more like a dull pressure behind my ribs. I noticed how her laughter changed when she talked about work. How she guarded small details she used to share freely. How late nights stopped coming with explanations. Every instinct told me something was shifting beneath the surface. But I loved her. I trusted the life we'd built. Trust, I believed, meant choosing faith over suspicion. So when that inner voice whispered that something felt wrong, I ignored it, and convinced myself that love meant not asking the questions I was afraid to hear answered. The first time I asked Marissa about Grant, I tried to sound calm. Curious even. I told myself that tone mattered, that if I didn't accuse, she wouldn't feel attacked. She barely looked up from her phone before sighing like I'd disappointed her. "You're being paranoid," she said. "I can't believe you don't trust me." That word stuck. Paranoid. It turned my concern into a flaw. Every question after that came with consequences. She'd go quiet. Withdraw affection. Ask why I was trying to start fights when things were already stressful. Somehow, her late nights became my fault for adding pressure. I started doubting myself. Maybe I was insecure. Maybe I'd let past baggage leak into a good marriage. So I tried harder. I cooked more. I stopped asking questions. I told her I trusted her even when my chest felt tight saying it. Grant became a constant background presence. Mentioned casually, praised often. "He gets me," she said once, then laughed it off like it was nothing. I noticed how defensive she became when his name came up, how quickly she changed subjects. The red flags were small at first. A deleted text notification she brushed off. A receipt from a bar she claimed she'd never been to. Her phone suddenly locked with a new password. Each one alone meant nothing. Together they formed a pattern I didn't want to see. The night everything broke, I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a charger in her bag when her phone lit up. One preview. One name. One message that said too much. In that moment, denial collapsed. I finally had proof. and it confirmed the fear I'd been trained to ignore. The confrontation wasn't loud like I'd imagined. There was no shouting, no dramatic confessions. I placed the proof in front of Marissa and waited for something: remorse, panic, an apology. What I got instead was a long silence and a tired look that felt worse than anger. She didn't deny it. She just said she was confused. Not sorry. Not ashamed. Confused, like I was a phase she'd outgrown. She told me she didn't mean to hurt me, but she also didn't say she wanted to fix anything. The conversation felt rehearsed, as if she'd already mourned the marriage before I even knew it was dying. The divorce followed quickly, almost efficiently. Paperwork, signatures, neutral conversations with lawyers who treated our life like a transaction. Friends said it was better this way: clean, quiet, no drama. But the silence hurt more than a fight ever could have. It made everything feel disposable. Marissa moved out and moved on with unsettling ease. New routines. New energy. A version of herself I didn't recognize and clearly hadn't been meant for me anymore. Meanwhile, I stayed behind with the echo of a life that had ended without closure. I carried a strange mix of shame and grief, wondering how I'd missed so much, questioning whether I'd ever truly known my own wife. There were no clear answers, only the dull ache of being replaced. Weeks after the divorce was finalized, I ran into an old acquaintance who mentioned her casually. "She and Grant seem really happy," they said, smiling. Hearing his name after everything was final hit harder than the papers ever did, and made it clear the story hadn't ended where I thought it had. After the divorce, the truth came out in pieces I never asked for. A comment here. An awkward pause there. Eventually, someone said it plainly without meaning to hurt me. "I thought you knew," they admitted. That sentence followed me everywhere. Friends confessed they'd noticed the closeness between Marissa and Grant long before I did. Coworkers mentioned the lunches, the inside jokes, the way they always seemed paired together. No one said anything because it wasn't their place. I nodded and pretended I understood, but inside something hollowed out. Realizing I was the last to know hurt more than the affair itself. It meant I'd been living in a version of reality everyone else had already moved past. The betrayal wasn't just Marissa's. It was the silence of people who watched and said nothing while my life quietly unraveled. I pulled back after that. Fewer calls. Fewer explanations. I focused on work, on routine, on rebuilding something that belonged only to me. I learned how to be alone in ways I'd never practiced before. Quiet dinners, empty weekends, long walks where I replayed conversations and tried to forgive myself for trusting too much. Slowly the anger dulled. The pain settled into something manageable. I told myself the worst was over. The divorce was final. The truth was out. There was nothing left to confront. Then one afternoon months later, I checked my mailbox and found an envelope that didn't belong in my hands. Thick paper. Formal lettering. A return address I recognized instantly. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the names on the front, realizing I'd been wrong. The story wasn't over. It was inviting me back in. I took a seat near the back, exactly where someone like me belonged. Far enough to see everything, close enough to feel it. The room buzzed with quiet excitement, but beneath it ran something sharper. Curiosity, recognition, discomfort. I caught whispers when people noticed me. Some looked away too fast. Others stared like they were trying to place a memory they didn't want to acknowledge. Marissa looked radiant in a way that felt unreal, like I was watching a stranger wear her face. She laughed easily, leaning into Grant with a familiarity that cut deeper than anger ever could. Grant stood proud beside her, confident, relaxed, as if this ending had always been his. Seeing them together as husband and wife made my chest tighten, not from jealousy but from the finality of it. Every small gesture landed heavily. The way she adjusted his tie. The way he rested a hand at her back. These weren't stolen moments anymore. They were public, celebrated, applauded. I felt exposed just by being there, like my presence alone carried a story no one wanted to talk about. At the same time, I was invisible. No one approached me. No one acknowledged what this day must have cost me. I existed in a strange in-between, seen but not addressed. As the ceremony unfolded, I focused on breathing, on staying still, on not letting my expression betray me. The vows passed in a blur I didn't need to hear. When the officiant announced them married, the room erupted in applause. Music swelled. Chairs shifted. Glasses clinked. The ceremony ended and the speeches were about to begin. I had no idea the quiet was about to shatter. The first speech was harmless. A friend told a few jokes, everyone laughed on cue, and I almost relaxed. Then I noticed a woman standing near the edge of the room, waiting with a patience that felt deliberate. I didn't recognize her. She wasn't part of the bridal party, didn't look like family, and yet she carried herself like someone who belonged there for a reason. Her name, I learned when someone whispered it, was Lydia Mercer. When she stepped forward and asked for the microphone, the room hesitated. This wasn't on the program. I saw it immediately in Marissa's face. The smile froze just for a second too long. Grant's shoulders stiffened, his eyes flicking toward her with open alarm. Whatever this was, it wasn't expected. Lydia took the microphone calmly, her expression composed, almost sympathetic. She introduced herself briefly, her voice steady enough to quiet the room. Then she said she wanted to share something from a few years back. That single phrase shifted the air. People leaned in. The casual chatter died. I watched Grant shake his head almost imperceptibly, as if willing her to stop. Marissa avoided looking at anyone, her hands clasped too tightly in front of her. No one interrupted Lydia. No one laughed it off. She spoke carefully, choosing her words with intent, hinting at a connection that predated this wedding. She mentioned shared offices, late nights, conversations that crossed lines long before anyone admitted it. My heart started pounding again, louder than before. I didn't know what she was about to say, but I knew it mattered. The room held its breath. Lydia paused, glanced once at the bride and groom, and opened her mouth to finish what she'd started. Lydia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The room was already silent enough to hear every breath. She explained that she'd worked closely with both Grant and Marissa years earlier, back when their friendship was still being labeled as harmless. She spoke with the certainty of someone who had no reason to lie. She named dates, projects, late nights that were written off as work but weren't. She said the relationship didn't begin after the divorce, like everyone had been led to believe. It started while Marissa was still married, while I was still trying to fix a marriage I didn't know had already been abandoned. Gasps rippled through the room. People turned in their chairs, whispering openly now. Faces that had been smiling minutes earlier hardened with confusion and judgment. Someone muttered, "Oh my God," loud enough for everyone to hear. Lydia continued, revealing how the story had been carefully edited during the divorce. How timelines were shifted. How truths were omitted to make everything look clean and justified. Each sentence stripped another layer away from the image Marissa had presented to the world. Marissa stood frozen, eyes wide, color draining from her face. The confident bride was gone, replaced by someone cornered by her own past. Grant stepped forward, his voice sharp as he told Lydia to stop, reaching for the microphone. "Enough," he said, forcing a laugh that fooled no one. But the damage was already done. The room no longer saw a happy couple celebrating love. They saw the cost of it. And Grant, gripping the microphone too tightly, was finally losing control of the story he thought he owned. The room erupted the moment Grant tried to shut it down. Voices overlapped, questions flew, and the carefully staged celebration unraveled in minutes. Chairs scraped back as guests stood, some arguing, others grabbing coats, all of them suddenly aware they were part of something far uglier than a wedding toast. What was meant to be a beginning collapsed under the weight of its own lies. I watched it happen with a strange sense of distance. No satisfaction. No triumph. Just clarity. This wasn't revenge, it was exposure. And it didn't require me to say a word. Outside the venue, the night air felt colder. Marissa found me near the entrance, her composure gone, mascara smudged, anger and panic tangled together. She accused Lydia of sabotage, of jealousy, of ruining everything. Then she turned on me like I was somehow responsible for being present. That's when I finally spoke. I told her I wasn't there to destroy her. I told her I had spent months blaming myself for trusting her, for believing her version of events. I said the truth had hurt, but the lies had hurt more, especially the ones she'd let me live with alone. For the first time she had nothing to say. The words left my chest like a weight dropping. I didn't feel loud or righteous. I felt finished. Finished carrying her secrets. Finished being silent to protect people who hadn't protected me. Behind us, the wedding was emptying out fast. I adjusted my jacket, met her eyes one last time, and walked away without rushing. Karma didn't look dramatic. It looked quiet. And I finally felt free. The days after the wedding were quieter than I expected. The fallout spread slowly like ink in water. News traveled. What had happened, what Lydia revealed, the cracks in the marriage that everyone could see now. Grant and Marissa's relationship, once so carefully polished, began to unravel under scrutiny and tension. Arguments leaked to friends, subtle disappearances replaced public smiles, and the honeymoon period they had tried to manufacture collapsed almost instantly. I didn't gloat. I didn't seek confirmation of their struggles. I didn't need to. Watching from the sidelines, I realized the point wasn't punishment. It was clarity. The wedding had given me something I hadn't had in years. Understanding. I understood what had been taken from me, and more importantly, I understood that my life was still mine to shape. I chose peace over revenge. Not because it was easy, but because it was freeing. For the first time, I allowed myself to let go of the bitterness, the what-ifs, and the endless replaying of her choices. I focused on my own life. My home, my routines, the friendships I'd rebuilt, and the small joys I'd neglected while living in shadows of betrayal. Betrayal had tested me, but it hadn't destroyed me. It had shaped me, taught me resilience, and reminded me what I valued most: honesty, boundaries, and self-respect. Standing at the edge of a new chapter, I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. I was ready to reclaim my future, not as someone defined by what I had lost, but as someone who had survived, grown, and moved forward.